Hi, I'm Kelly, the Scarf Witch, and this is the Liminal Tapestry, a space where I follow glimmers of remembered threads, weaving through story, symbol, and soul. Threads that rise from the liminal and move through both the mysterious eternal and the practical now. I don't always know where they're leading, but I follow the movement as a quiet invitation to wander and to weave. I have to tell you, I nearly didn't even start this episode, not because I don't have anything to say, but because I have too much. It felt impossible to just choose one. They seem all interrelated, and I didn't know which one to start with. And it's funny because I named this podcast The Liminal Tapestry, and here I am tangled in the warp and the weft before I've even begun. But maybe that's part of it. Maybe beginning isn't about having clarity. Maybe it's about trusting that first thread that you follow, that it will lead somewhere true, even if you don't know yet what part of the pattern it reveals. And it's something I've been trying to practice lately. And the Scarf Witch started as a nickname, one that a friend gave me after I read something aloud while sitting on his couch with a scarf draped around my shoulders, looking like some sort of old wise crone in that particular moment. And it stuck, not because it was clever, but because it felt like home. It felt like something that I was starting to become. A scarf, fluid, shifting, repurposed 100 different ways. A witch, one who listens, subverts expectation, makes her own paradigms, and who works with the earth and the unseen alike. Together, they now speak to how I move through the world. Reverent, adaptive, woven in mystery. So here I am, speaking from the threshold. This podcast, I think, will be a sort of devotional to walking that path, to embodying the experience of wandering without a map. I thought I had to know what the structure was before I spoke, but this isn't about certainty. It's about remembering how to move through the unknown. So I'm starting here, in the mess, in the mystery, in the tangle, because it's honest. Because somewhere in this strand, the story is already taking place. The liminal is the space I feel most called to traverse. And I keep getting tripped up because, for me at least, the way in is deeply unstructured. As with this very dualistic earth realm, each opposite contains the seed of the other. I lean heavily on structures and frameworks in the world of matter. But if I'm able to walk between that grounded world and the pure, unstructured potential of the void, I need to let go of certainty. So if this is to be my practice, then my need for structure shall be my offering. In any transformative path, something must be surrendered. What am I willing to release to make room for something new to bloom? I've been living with this image of the tapestry for a long time now, not just as a metaphor, but as something alive. Not just as an idea, but a living symbol. What I've come to think of as a form of symbolic animism. And that's a podcast for another day. It's not just representing something, it's in relationship with me. It helps me understand the nature of reality, the shape of my practice, and the way I move through the world. Separately, I've circled around dualism inside and out, and that has threads that run all over my tapestry. So much so that it has brought me to realize I need to really understand this liminal space. Not even at the intersection of the opposites, but like the very in-between, a space that in and of itself asks not to be solved, just to be witnessed. And so what's the nature of this tapestry? At the foundation, I believe we're all the universe expressing itself through form. And all potential paths, all the ways it could go, exist on some level. If we could zoom out far enough, maybe we'd see them. Every possible path existing in potential. Like the idea of the multiverse. Each choice, left or right, splinters reality. But it's not just about what we choose, it's about the perspective we hold while we choose it. I could turn left joyfully or left with regret. Each of these becomes its own thread. The direction, yes, but also the emotion, the awareness, the meaning I'm making in the moment. Even the choices I haven't yet realized, the paths I haven't walked or brought into form, those too exist. The threads of the past that have been forgotten or held in my memory in a particular way. At one point, when contemplating the nature of time, I thought about past, present, and future as both states and actions, memories, moments, and possibilities, each of which can be recalled, experienced, and imagined. Where we can recall a possibility and imagine a memory in equal measure to recalling a memory and imagining a possibility. And I'm constantly wondering, at what point does this unconventional relationship to time unground me into a potential spiritual psychosis or bypassing? Because the goal is not to run away, but to connect and to find what it is that connects my individual fractal to source. And what if embodiment is the grounding effort? What if I could ground to the unknown, both past and future, and actively hold awareness in this particular moment, in this particular configuration of all the possibilities, witnessing the process of putting into form, lighting up what once was in potential? Maybe that's what makes this moment sacred. I'm the one choosing which version to bring to life through presence, through choice, and through feeling. It's given me a lot of reverence for all of the versions of me, my parallel selves across this incarnation and potentially others. I believe that some level of individuation exists after this body fades, that it's not straight back to unity and source. Maybe a layer that holds the consciousness of my higher self, holding all of the threads of me, what makes me an individual separate from source. And this also ties into how I understand manifestation. I don't see it as creating something from nothing. I see it as aligning with a thread that already exists. If my day-to-day self is walking through this two-dimensional maze, my higher self sees the full picture. If I'm in clear communication with that part of me, I can say, this is the kind of experience I want to have. And from that place, I can start to receive those nudges. Turn left here, slow down here, pause here. It's not about forcing a path. It's about turning into the alignment that already exists. And honestly, understanding what we're even talking about when we're talking about alignment, that's a whole other thread for another day. So I'm here in this tapestry of all of me. And then I think everybody else has their own versions of this tapestry, all of the potential ways it could weave for them. And then how we can all weave together. And to be honest, this helped me wrap my head around this idea of choosing our lesson plan when preparing to come down to Earth School. I never quite understood how we could possibly lay out a life when it's so interconnected with other lives so intimately. It also helps me to understand that there's more ways to go, how I can still find a path to what I want while still aligning to the highest good. Really, I just don't want to conquer or to not care about how my actions affect others in an effort to live my best life. I feel like I've lived through eons of lifetimes where I've embodied a conquering type of power rather than a still and centered sovereign type of power. The flow and the cycles of duality fascinate me, day to night, month to month, epoch to epoch, and a thread I certainly plan to share in the future. I also believe that we are woven to others not just in our experiences, but in our relationships, even at a soul level. There's something I see when I think about soul families or soul groups. It's like turning the tapestry at a certain angle and then suddenly see a set of souls aligned the same thread. Maybe it's the same thread of learning, an archetype or a resonance. And then you shift your angle again and new alignments come into view. New relationships emerge, new synchronicities. Right? So the tapestry isn't just a surface, it's dimensional. I have trouble picturing it like a flatlander. I'm bound to this particular perspective, finding only glimmers of something larger. I think this is why that symbol, metaphor, and art become our bridges, ways of touching the architecture of something too vast to hold on to directly. They help us encode complexity, allowing us to commune with the ineffable in a way that bypasses the mind and lands directly into the body. I find it hard to draw the line on what is a symbol and I don't know what, I can't even name it. Well, actually, when I tried to find the opposite of symbol, I realized it was source. Symbol is an image, it's a copy of an original. What is the original but source? Maybe what we experience as the world of matter is a hologram after all. There's just some level of shared agreement on what is solid, what we call real. And that opens up the idea of paradigm shifting, with one foot in on what most agree is real, the laws that govern this existence. Where can we push the boundary on what we can put into form? There's a quote that I love from The Secret Garden. At first, people refuse to believe a strange new thing can be done. Then they begin to hope it can be done. Then they see it can be done. Then it's done. And all the world wonders why it was never done centuries ago. So, how can I stay grounded enough to stay in touch with the current shared paradigm and yet have enough imagination and courage to shift paradigms? And that brings me to the space in between. I've always been drawn to opposites. I relentlessly try to map them, find the lines between them, group everything into yin and yang. And by doing so, I keep encountering a broader pattern, the constant cycle, the flow. Each seeming opposite contains the seed of the other. It's not about static categories. It's about the movement, like breath. And I know this isn't an entirely new concept. In fact, it's at the core of Taoism, how I understand it. If the source is infinite oneness, then this world of form takes shape because of duality, the natural separation of two forces that then dance together in a constant flow. I really first made this connection when I realized with a lazy eye and spotty depth perception that I really inferred depth from shadow. And isn't that just a metaphor for my entire life? But really put into form this idea that we must have light and shadow to see form. We must have push and pull to create movement. We get to navigate and experience this world because of the separateness. But the separateness is excruciatingly painful. And that makes sense. It's not a new idea that Earth School is the densest and most difficult realms to incarnate into. I'm trying to stop labeling everything into strict categories of this or that and realizing there's a whole realm within that tension, an entire space between. And that liminal space, that's where potential lives. It's not the same potential of the void. It's the space between what is possible and what has already been realized. I have work to do there in that space. And it's not as scary as it would have been for me in the past, but it is disorienting. I keep trying to look for a compass, trying to find it in the material world, but that's only one half. Lifting out and connecting to my higher self, a part of me that exists at least a layer above this raw separation, I'm working on trusting that connection as my compass. I've realized the liminal may be something that I've been circling all along, not map, define, or contain, but something to breathe, to live inside, to walk through. And so I think that's what this podcast is becoming, a quiet place for meandering, for feeling the thread, for noticing the weave, for wondering aloud in the spaces between. I want to tell you all the things. I want to share every little thread, afraid you'll hear one or two episodes and jump conclusion about where I'm going. I grappled with overstructuring the first set of episodes so that you could see this is wide. Maybe it's not even that wide. It feels wide to me. I can't help but imagine that my words put into form something that someone out there hasn't quite been able to articulate but feels deeply. So that's the thread that I hold on to here with the intention of this podcast. I trust the movement. I trust the embodiment. And if this touched a part of you or lit up a thread or two in your own life, I hope you'll meet me here again, between the mysterious eternal and the practical now. Until then, may the threads tug gently and your weaving be effortless.